Magadi Acres, penned by Maxwell Pereira and published by Redomania. My name is Rini Simon Khanna, and I will anchor the event and introduce everyone to you. When you think of Maxwell Pereira, you think of a policeman immediately. But to describe Maxwell as just a policeman is doing grave injustice to the storehouse of talent that he is. How many of us know a policeman who has been a cartoon character, or a policeman who has made criminals sing like canaries, and himself bursts into song at the drop of a helmet? A policeman who makes millions chuckle every day in the morning with his witty, humorous, and irreverent thoughts in newspaper columns. Not only does this extraordinary policeman have many nicknames, he has as many interests and accomplishments to his credit. Children around the country know him as Colonel Pinto, the lovable army man, accompanying the Muppets on Gully Gully Sim Sim, the Indian version of Sesame Street. Music lovers know him as the eminent bass singer with the Capital City Minstrels. Theater audiences in the 70s may remember him as a founder member of 3 Clubs, a theater group that he set up with 2 friends. Television channels frequently call upon him to energize their debates and discussions. Students and trainees of institutes as diverse as the National Police Academy and the School of Planning and Architecture know him as a lecturer and a teacher who not only has enlightened them, but has also entertained them. His newspaper columns, as I mentioned earlier, are hugely popular for their insights, for a look from the inner circle, as it were, and of course, his trademark humor. He's been called the thinking policeman, and he has an official name that is just 5 names short: Maxwell Francis Joseph Pereira Kamath. Most policemen we know just retire and quietly fade away, and are usually seen taking long walks in parks with a baton or a dog for company. Fortunately for us, Maxwell decided to continue to engage in debate and discussions, singing at concerts, and of course, to pen his anecdotal musings in book form. His first book was aptly named The Other Side of Policing, and this volume helped us all discover Sarson Da Saga, Daroga Raj, and the Gadha Parade, among other startling revelations from Maxi's eventful life and career in the Indian Police Service. His next volume, The Tandoor Murder, had revelations by Maxwell that had led the investigation team some 2 decades ago into one of the country's most sensational cases. He's now back with a new volume called Magadi Acres, The Story of Coffee. And once again, he's woven tales around real-life experiences laced liberally with his imagination to give us a glimpse into his childhood, growing up on a coffee plantation. He's captured it well, the nostalgia, the sights and sounds of life on an estate, the innumerable stories that surround the people of a small town, the antics of young city-bred boys discovering life on a farm, all told through the eyes of the Sahukar's son. I don't want to reveal too much, as we will get Maxi to relive these moments when he talks to me later this evening. But let me say it's really heartwarming to see so many friends and well-wishers in the audience, and I'd like to specially welcome onto stage 2 dear friends who join us for the launch of the book, Mr. Manish Tiwari and Mr. Pankaj Vora. There are 2 gentlemen, if I could request them to please come up. There are 2 gentlemen who hardly need an introduction, but for the benefit of the few who don't know them too well, I will venture into describing them. Manish Tiwari is a leading Supreme Court lawyer and former parliamentarian who served as Minister of Information and Broadcasting in the UPA government. He's also been a member, a special invitee to various cabinet committees, numerous empowered group of ministers dealing with a diverse array of policy issues. He's been spokesperson for the cabinet and the UPA government, and armed with his political acumen and his admirable clarity, he's authored 3 books himself: Fables of Fractured Times, Tidings of Troubled Times, and the latest, Decoding a Decade, The Politics of Policymaking. All essential and very well-researched reading for those of us trying to understand the perspectives on a wide array of issues, trends, and events, be it the domestic or the international arena, or the opaque underbelly of Indian politics or political thinking on national security matters. Pankaj is currently the managing editor of Sunday Guardian, and during his 4 decades of journalism, he has worked with 3 major newspapers, the Times of India, the Hindustan Times, and the Hindu. Pankaj has been the political editor of the Hindustan Times for over 12 years and has also been the city editor of both the Hindustan Times and the Times of India, and perhaps is the only journalist to have headed the city units of 2 rival newspapers. He specializes in city affairs besides writing on national politics, and has had a long-standing association with Maxwell when he was in service because of the common areas of operation and interest. We've also got in the audience Dipankar Mukherjee, the publisher and director of Redomania. If I could request Dipankar to please stand so that the audience can see you and recognize you. Dipankar is the publisher of Maxi's latest book. Redomania is one of India's youngest and fastest growing traditional publishing houses, and under Dipankar has produced over 60 books in just about 4 years, with some critically acclaimed titles as well. Dipankar is an engineer by training and holds an MBA degree from IIT Madras and has been in the corporate world for about 9 years before becoming an entrepreneur. He also manages businesses in hospitality and in manufacturing. I'd like to now request the star of the evening, Maxwell Pereira, if I could invite you first to please come up and join us on stage. I hope all of you have got a copy of the book with you. Yes? No? Nobody here? Have you guys got the copy of the book? All right, thank you. With the star cast up here, I think we should just get to it and unveil the book. Gentlemen, if I could request you all to please reveal the latest much-awaited book from Maxwell Pereira, Magadi Acres, A Story of Coffee, published by Redomania. And as you struggle with the wrapping, thank you. Story of Coffee, Magadi Acres, published by Redomania. We've got a counter outside the hall for you to get yourself a copy if you haven't already. So do pick it up as you leave this evening. We've got a very special person in the audience, someone who's been really gracious in agreeing to be here today and do us a special honor. He's a former colleague and, of course, is a well-known theater, radio, and television personality, Suneeth Tandon. The reason Suneeth is here and is making a cameo appearance is simply because he's got somewhere else to go, and he was committed to that engagement earlier, but Maxwell has been able to persuade him to come and join us for this evening's book launch. And I've requested, Maxwell has requested him to please read out a segment from the book for all of you to enjoy. So, Suneeth, without delaying you any further, I'd request you to please come up. Ladies and gentlemen, your hands together to welcome Suneeth.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Rini. I'm sorry. Yes, I was dragooned into this just this morning by Maxi. He called me up at 8:15 and said, please come for this. I said, I'm supposed to be somewhere else at 6:30. He said, no, come. We'll finish off with you fast and then you can go. So I'm going to be late for wherever I had to go. Anyway, thank you very much, Maxi, for making me part of this book launch. It's a real pleasure, once again, to join you for a launch of one of your books. He's also he sent me one excerpt, which I'll read at the end, but he's just asked me to read a few others from the book, which I have just seen. So pardon me if I make any very obvious errors while reading it. So these are excerpts from one of the chapters of the book called Story of Coffee, which set the context. So the first excerpt begins as follows. But then coffee beans were native to Ethiopia, and most coffee laws attribute the origins of coffee to young Kaldi, an Ethiopian goatherd in the Kaffa region, who chewed on coffee berries for extra energy while tending to his flock at night. It was not long before the beans got cooked and roasted and even boiled for its energy-giving portion. The legend of Kaldi says that this Ethiopian goatherd observed his charges eating the red berries from a nearby tree and became excited. He felt excited with a great lift. From this story stands established the fact that the coffee plant originally comes from Ethiopia. Following that, the Ethiopians used coffee to create a sort of energy bar, which they ate for a midday boost. Back in Ethiopia, Kaldi told the abbot of the local monastery about his find, and the abbot came up with the idea of drying and boiling the berries to make a beverage. It was not long before the beans got cooked and roasted and even boiled for energy-giving potions. When the abbot threw the berries into the fire, the unmistakable aroma of what now we know as coffee drifted through the night air. He retrieved the now roasted beans by raking them from the embers, then ground them up and dissolved the powder in hot water, which perhaps made him the world's first cup of coffee. Skip a bit. The obsessively consumed drink seemed to have been concocted in the very pit of hell. And that is why some of the Pope's advisors called it the bitter invention of Satan. Before making a decision on whether to formally ban the troublesome beverage, the Holy Father asked for a cup. After taking a few sips, his reaction was unexpected and wonderful. "This Satan's drink is so delicious," he is reported to have said. "It would be a pity to let the infidels have exclusive use of it. We should cheat the devil by baptizing it." Whatever nefarious spirits may have been attached to the bitter brew were scattered forever when the Holy Father extended the papal blessing to coffee beans, officially making coffee an acceptable beverage for a Christian to drink. After Pope Clement VIII baptized coffee, the first coffee house opened in Rome in 1645, and the rest is history. In coffee law, I found so much of intrigue, jealousy, theft, smuggling, subterfuge, and quite a bit of industrial espionage to imagine the extent by which these people loved their coffee by then. Unbelievable though, I found that the world today acknowledges none of this would have been possible had not Baba Budan succeeded in his initial enterprise. Hundreds of years later, the fruits of his labor with the delightfully flavorsome Indian coffee, in whatever brand name marketed, is enjoyed as the best the world over with great relish. Dad enlarged my knowledge on this Indian religious man, the Sufi saint Baba Budan. In 1670, while returning from his Hajj pilgrimage, he carried from Yemen 7 fertile coffee beans strapped to his stomach to the hills of Chikmagalur in the neighborhood of our own Sakleshpur. The Arabs then were wary of sharing their knowledge of coffee with the outside world, keeping it a secret by carrying with them only the roasted or boiled seed and never in its raw and fresh form. So, Budan was at grave risk of severe punishment had he been discovered with the fresh beans. Not only did the beans germinate and soon grow into a plantation, ever since the days of Baba Budan's smuggling venture, coffee cultivation took root and flourishing plantations got established in India. especially in the main coffee-growing districts of Karnataka, Chikmagalur, Hassan, and Coorg. Over the years, coffee growing also spread to parts of Kerala and Tamil Nadu, and to non-traditional new areas of Andhra, Odisha, and the North Indian states too. And finally, the excerpt chosen by Maxi, I might say, which he had asked me to read earlier. And I'm saying once again, chosen by Maxi, so don't blame me. Interestingly, decades later, on a visit to Yemrehane Christos, a 10th century cave church over a lake discovered inside the Danakil mountain in Ethiopia, I did find people in rural settings having their bunna coffee brewed from freshly roasted beans. I watched them roast and cook the brew in a jibina, a crude clay oven on something like a sigri still used in Indian villages. Right under my very eyes, after this temple church visit, some 42 kilometers from Lalibela. The coffee brewed by the Ethiopians as bunna is known for its bright fruited and floral flavors, which typically has a higher acidity, a medium body, and complex flavor notes. The beans are washed and naturally processed. The method used has a huge impact on the final taste of the coffee. I was keen to drink their bunna coffee since the beverage is essentially reputed to have originated in Ethiopia. But the bunna they presented disappointed me, as it totally differed from the rich, aromatic, modern-day tastes and flavors of coffee I was used to. As I was with many other aspects of the Ethiopian people, who appeared to still prefer an unchanged and ignorantly content lifestyle of 2,000 years ago, as it was in the biblical era. At least that is how the lifestyle of the rural people outside cities like Addis Ababa appeared to me. The Yemrehane Christos I visited was supposed to be on a lake inside the cave halfway up the Danakil mountain, according to legend and information on the internet. Whereas, in actual fact, I could not get a glimpse of any water, and instead I found mummified dead bodies said to number 5,774 preserved grotesquely in the cave's dehumidified air. And then I could not help recording in my notes another interesting observation. My shocking discovery that probably women in Ethiopia never wore bras. It may be an unfair conclusion arrived at through a single observation, but it appeared logical to me that they never needed a bra, especially the rural folk outside Addis Ababa or other towns. Ethiopians, I had also observed, walked so much in a day, 40, 50 miles over undulating terrain of hills and dale that seemed to betray the secret of their slim and firm bodies, with rippling, taut, and glistening muscles. I observed their breasts were an artist's delight, molded and firm, never sagging. The same with their buttocks, muscular, stiff, and obviously hard. The casual apparel they wore, a light and loose thin cloth thrown casually over their body, not particularly wanting to hide any part of it, with not a shade of shame or guilt attached. As if flaunting it proudly, boldly, and unabashedly at the viewer. This is how I found the young woman who was in my intimate proximity in front of me at the Bunna Cafe, with her nippled treasures tantalizingly in full view under her single garment, as she brewed for us the Bunna. That was an aside which has nothing to do with coffee, but needed mention here because of my eagerness to drink the bunna the Ethiopians had on offer. Thank you very much. Maxi.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Suneeth, for enthralling us with your beautiful rendition. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's appropriate now that we should have the erudite, articulate, and thought-provoking senior lawyer, politician, and author Manish Tiwari to share his thoughts with us.
Mr. Maxwell Pereira, Shri Pankaj Vora, Mr. Suneet Tandon, the publisher, Mr. Dipankar Mukherjee, ladies and gentlemen, it's, I think, a great tribute to the author, Mr. Maxwell Pereira, that so many people have turned out on a Sunday evening to be a part of the launch of his latest book, Magadi Acres. It's usual that at a book launch, you do compliment the author for his exhortations, because that is the done thing. But be that as it may, I think Mr. Pereira has written an absolute masterpiece. And it is a must read for everybody, primarily because of the fact that he has so artfully mixed history with his reminiscences, his growing up years, his encounters with the wild, both reptiles and humans, that it makes an absolutely fascinating read. Mr. Pereira was so kind enough to send the book across. And as I browsed through it when I went to my constituency on Thursday, and of course on the way back today, I was completely struck by the book. And I couldn't even put it down for a second. And though Suneet has read some excerpts from it, but I think possibly some of the more profound excerpts have been left out, and I just wanted to read one which has really, which was really thought-provoking and extremely profound. It comes from the chapter which deals with the origins of coffee. And on page 47, Mr. Pereira writes that one of the most interesting facts in the history of the coffee drink is that wherever it has been introduced, it has spelled revolution. It has been the world's most radical drink in that its function has always been to make people think. And when the people begin to think, they become dangerous to tyrants and to the foes of liberty of thought and action. And as I read these 4 or 5 lines, I could not help thinking that India has not been drinking enough coffee over the past 8 years. So I think I think it's time that all of us started drinking a little more coffee if we want to save this nation, or at least the idea of the nation that we grew up with. What I also found extremely interesting was the juxtaposition which Mr. Pereira made between tea and coffee. And of course, to some North Indians like us who, relish our tea and relish our coffee also, Mr. Pereira made it a point to drive it home that tea is of very recent origin in India. It was an Angelicized drink consumed by the upper classes, especially the British aristocracy, which sort of lorded it over the tea tree, the tea plantations, while coffee actually went much deeper into the social milieu of India. And of course, the manner in which he describes the origins of coffee in India, the fact that it was smuggled by a Baba, a holy person, Baba Buddhan, if I get that name correctly, from Arabia or wherever he had gone on a pilgrimage. And had it not been for him, a lot of people in South India wouldn't have become extremely, extremely rich over the centuries. But it's a fascinating tale of how a surreptitious activity, possibly intended in great good faith, yielded huge mercantile dividends for generations of people, now going back centuries. And this intersection of both the brew and the economics of the brew, which he brings out in his book, it makes a fascinating read. And of course, my favorite was the encounter which Mr. Pereira had on his father's estate with rather very icky reptiles, if I can use that word. And so as someone who's mortally frightened of snakes, it made for some really terrifying reading, and reminded me of my own childhood years, because Chandigarh was not really the concrete jungle that it is now in the years that we were growing up, and it was quite wild. And finally, of course, his great love for guns, and as all young boys had, have a kind of fascination for that weapon which makes a big noise, and the fact that while trying to hunt a wild boar, he actually almost became the victim of the wild boar. He was so sleepy that he actually fell out of the machan, and if his dad wouldn't have loved him so much, well, Mr. Pereira may not have been around with us today. So, be that as it may, there are exceedingly interesting anecdotes which he's related, and it's been related with so much of elan, with so much of finesse, and the subtlety and the humor which sort of comes out and makes you laugh. It's almost like P.G. Wodehouse being reincarnated. So, Mr. Pereira, may I once again congratulate you for an excellent effort and an excellent book. And I would like to commend it to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, that it will really make a fascinating read, and you would enjoy every single word of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tiwari. Well, like Maxwell and Manish, Pankaj Vora is privy to many happenings that ordinary folks like you and me don't get to hear of or be a part of, and so has a truckload of experiences under his belt, some of which he has written about and discussed in his innumerable articles over the years. As I mentioned earlier, Pankaj has interacted closely with Maxwell, and their friendship has survived many a crime. I'd like to now request Pankaj to please share some of those memories with us today.
Mr. Maxwell Pereira, Manish Bhai, Mr. Mukherjee, Rini, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here for the release of Mr. Maxwell Pereira's latest book. And, Sunit has already read excerpts from the book. Manish has given a lot of description also of what all has been written. And, I was asked by Rini to basically concentrate not so much on the book, but on the author. Mr. Maxwell Pereira has been a phenomenal officer who has worn many hats. When, I was in active journalism, in working for daily newspapers, Maxwell's middles, especially in the Times of India, were always a pleasure to read. And, Maxwell, though, was posted at that point of time out of Delhi. And when he came back to Delhi, I think his first posting, one had heard about him, but one had not known him personally, and I got to know him for the first time when he was Additional DCP North District, and I still remember the date. It was 19th December 1983, there were two students of Hansraj College, Nadir Bilimoria and Hemant Sahe, who attempted to kidnap an infant from the compound of the Dalmias on Rajpur Road, and somebody alerted the flying squad as the police control room was at that point of time called, and these boys were apprehended and taken to the Civil Lines police station. There was Maxwell interrogating them along with his team, and that was the first day I interacted with him, and that was the day when he actually shared some of the information, some what had transpired, and these boys were, sent to police custody, and of course, whatever happened later happened to them. But that was my first day of meeting Maxwell Pereira, and there were many meetings which followed after that. Maxwell, as DCP, additional DCP North, was also working under another very exceptional police officer who I still rate as one of the finest DCPs Delhi has seen, Mr. Ram Asre Tiwari, who's no more with us, and who, had an exceptional innings as the district DCP of the North District. Later, Maxwell moved over to the South District as the DCP, and, his eye for detail and his, graphic visualization of the spot would many times, leave all us, reporters spellbound. There was a incident I still recall somewhere in Green Park or Horse Khas. There was a model, Nita or Nina Khetrapal, who was found dead. And, there had been a friendly entry into her house and her body was found, and it was a case of murder. I was unable to go to the spot. There were every other newspaper. I was working for the Times of India. Every other newspaper was there, and I was fearing that I'll get, totally outmaneuvered in the next day's paper. So I happened to speak to Maxwell, who picked up the phone and, came on the line. So I asked him for some details, and he gave such graphic details and such description that they were etched into my mind. And when I wrote the story, next day you will be surprised that I had more details than people who had been to the spot, because Maxwell had described things so clearly and vividly. That was Maxwell. Another time, when he was again in the South District, there was a very big case. There was this Washington Post South Asian Bureau Chief, William Claiborne. His daughter, Sarah Claiborne, she was a 17-year-old student of American International School. She was, found dead in the Hyatt Regency Hotel, and she had been in company of certain members of the Saudi Arabian Airlines people, and they had, drugged her, and she was intoxicated and had been raped, and I think she died of overdose of. So Maxwell had handled that case very, very meticulously, very, very carefully, and these Saudi Arabian guys were arrested despite a lot of pressure, perhaps on the Home Ministry from their consulate, and they were members of the airlines, and they were charged with, rape because she was under 18. It was statutory, and Maxwell was able to, deliver. There were many other incidents. We would have daily exchanges. There would be, sometimes arguments also, and then Maxwell got posted out of Delhi, and then another big incident took place in the South District. It was on 13th June 1987. There was a birthday party going on in the house of certain Bahals in Kailash Colony, and where a Sikh militant entered and shot dead about 10 or 12 of the people, and then he went on a rampage, killing people near Alkananda, Kalkaji, Malviya Nagar, and disappeared. Newspapers were full of it. There was no clue. No one was able to crack the case. And I was going to the police headquarters when on the staircase, there was Maxwell visiting Delhi, and I met him. So he said, "What are you guys doing? You don't even do proper follow-ups." So I asked him, "What's the matter?" He says, "I can give you one hint as to who the suspect is. You find out on your own." So, he said that the suspect was the middle distance champion runner of Delhi, and you find this out and you will reach a proper conclusion. So I got down and, did some homework, spoke to sports reporters and things like that. And there Maxwell's step was there, and, we zeroed in on Surjit Singh Penta, who was from the same village as Harjinder Singh Jinda, who had gunned down Lalit Makhan, General Vaidya, and others. and he was also related, his mother was related to Jinnah, and Surjit Singh Panta's, story started, and he again committed 2 more crimes in Delhi before he went off to Amritsar, where he committed suicide during Operation Black Thunder by consuming potassium cyanide. Maxwell, and our association continued. He, when he was then assigned later on his return, sometimes the traffic police, where he did the India Gate hexagon, where there's a one-way traffic now. It used to be 2 ways at one time. So that was something which was his contribution in streamlining the flow of traffic around the New Delhi area. And he did many more other things. And of course, his stint in, overseeing crime situations, where he had the assistance of some of the most brilliant police officers who were there, earlier upper subordinates, then inspectors, SHOs, then later ACPs. Some of them are sitting in the audience. His team used to have Rajinder Bakshi, there was Harsharan Verma, there was Lakshmi Narayan Rao, there was Giri, Vijay Malik is there, Harmeet Singh is there. All of them, they were, all, got a name for themselves for outstanding investigations, and they were all groomed essentially by him. He did many more things, but his biggest moment was when, the Tandoor case took place. And it was one of the most shocking crimes which, shook Delhi. And there was Maxwell who was asked to handle it. And he, finally brought in Sushil Sharma, who was the main culprit. And he was apprehended from Bangalore, brought back to Delhi, put on trial. And because of meticulous investigations by him, his team, Inspector Niranjan Singh at that time, I think, was the investigating officer. They did a commendable job, and Sushil Sharma was convicted, and he's, of course, now out after being released by the government. He lives somewhere there. And Maxwell, has always been considered as an iconic police officer, even though, he went on and in and out of Delhi, but his name and his legend lived on. He, of course, as Rini has mentioned, is a very good singer. He used to participate in choirs. On the Christmas day, his house on Ashoka Road used to be an open house where we would, my former chief reporter, who's also no longer there, N.K. Doval, and I would go there and, have a drink or a rum punch, and, it was hospitality all the way. And that's how it has been. He has also been held in very high esteem by his superior officers. I mean, the juniors, of course, soar on his name. But whether it was Mukund Kaushal, whether it was Nikhil Kumar, whether it was, Ajay Raj Sharma, it was, Ved Marwa, all of them, had held him in very high esteem. And I thought that, since the book, this is something, a departure from his earlier books, from his real passion, which has been, crime investigation. He has made a name for himself mostly as a police officer, but believe me that no one can deny that he is a man who has a multifaceted personality. He can write very well, has an eye for detail. He, is a very witty person, has a great sense of humor, and has observations which are not very common. And I'm very glad to be a part of his latest book launch, and I wish him all the best. And thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pankaj, for that. Lots of information that you've been able to share with us, and we clearly know that you've had a long-standing association with Maxwell. Before I request Mr. Tiwari and Mr. Vora to step down and take their seats in the audience while I talk to Maxwell, I'd like to request Dipanka Mukherjee, who's not been visible on stage, to please join us. And if all of you could just hold up the book as a photo opportunity for us to be able to, yeah. Thank you very much. Pankaj and Mr. Tiwari, if I could request you to please be seated in the audience while I engage with Maxi in a short conversation. And we don't want you to leave, so we do want you to remain in the audience, please. Thank you. All right. How are you feeling, Maxwell?
Oh, on top of the world.
First and foremost, I think I want to join everyone in giving him a salute, because it's been 14 years since your first book. 2008 is when The Other Side of Policing was published and launched. Both your previous books were based on your experiences, as Pankaj mentioned, as a tough policeman and a career that spanned almost 35 years. Magadi Acres takes us back to your childhood. What really prompted you to write this?
Before answering your question, there's a small correction that I would like to make. My first book was called Road Safety for Schools, which I wrote for school children. And this was as long ago as 1976. And Tejeshwar Singh, who was one of the readers,
Yes.
for the first book, as you said, for The Other Side of Policing, was the one who published for Macmillan the Road Safety for Schools. And Kiran, when she was DCP Crime, wanted to serialize it and give it free from the traffic police to the schools of Delhi. And well, that was just an aside, but I could write on crime. I could write on my cases that I solved or participated in the investigation, and I could go on and on, but that doesn't make me a literary person. Yeah.
Who are you kidding now?
No, really.
3 books under your belt already.
I didn't want to really be branded as only a crime writer. So I made a bold decision. I said, I will try. I had my difficulty, and I must compliment Dipankar here, that after struggling to get a publisher, I mean, literally, and even he said that, sir, what do I do? You're a good writer, but it's just of no commercial value. No one will, buy this book. Then I just quoted his own, publicity that he gave was, you are determined to promote good writing. How can you say that one side you say that this is good writing, this is beautiful writing, but, you won't be able to publish it. Overnight, I don't know what changed his stand, and he accepted. And that's how you see this book now. And he's taken a great risk. But I think in the run-up to it, in the feedback that we have received, and my friends have been marvelous. They've been so encouraging. Everyone has appreciated the cover, appreciate the content, appreciate the anecdotes that have been there. Well, rest is for us to, witness how the commercial aspect of it goes on. But I'm very happy. I'm not bothered. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to have my book read I want my book to be read, even if it costs me any amount to get the readership. Yeah.
You've called Magadi Acres a fictionalized account.
Yes.
But most of the incidents that are described in the book are from your childhood. And they've been beautifully narrated with really, details, intricate details. And I, as many in the audience know, we're all growing older rapidly, and many of us are losing our memories. How many almonds do you eat every day? What is the secret behind this memory? And, just for us to know, when maybe there are future writers in the audience, do you maintain a diary? Do you maintain a journal? How do you remember all these anecdotes?
Diary writing has been a passion for me. I mean, they complimented me for Tandoor Murder, for the details that I could, reproduce. That's mainly because of my diary. 99% I refer back to my diaries and to make my facts correct. And I never failed. The diary is there to stand by you. And literally, I won't say the diary has helped me a lot on this. But then the middles that I have written are mainly on memory. And most.
So do you write the diary to keep account of all the incidents?
No,
or?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. But incidents you write about are memories rejuvenated, and they help you. And it's been fascinating. And I have often spoken about every incident that you write about is you write for your pleasure. And it rejuvenates, it revitalizes your memory, and it doesn't really worry you, how you did it or what you did about it. And I love to go back into my diaries and reread them again and again. So that is a fillip, kind of a...
Do you still write diaries?
I do.
Okay.
I do. And I have...
There are lots more books coming, so...
No, whether the books are there, you'd be surprised my diaries would have 100 more books on crime. I didn't venture because when you're writing on crime, you can't be repetitive on the same thing. You have to have newer incidents, which I have, but then the methodology, the stuff that there are descriptions that you can give just to that extent, but not really evolve. I'm not a Perry Mason or an Earl Stanley Gardner or...
Well, you could be. I mean, crime was also something that is interesting for people to read on.
That's where I think most people are better writers. I concede that. I'm quite content. I don't want to compete with anyone. I'm happy with the little that I have been able to do. Okay. And that's nice.
Maxi, since your family moved to Magadi Acres, your childhood was spent, with your school holidays, indulging in all sorts of activities on the estate. You were hunting, you were learning about coffee, and, lots of other schoolboy antics were taking place. How did all of that, or particularly the growing up on a coffee estate, shape your personality?
Oh, I don't know to what extent it, shaped my personality, but it's been a pleasure. It's been fascinating growing up. Especially, I had a supporter in my younger sibling who swore by whatever I did. It didn't matter to him that how I did it, what what was expected of him. I plastered him the way I needed to, and he supported me nevertheless, and that was a great thing. And he made of himself a better man than me. I was a thunder-wielding policeman, but he was a curing doctor. I mean, I was a very famous, very, caring doctor, but he described himself as, I love the feeling of blood on my hands, because he was a surgeon.
Yeah.
But he was a surgeon to cure. But that was how he described his profession. But he was nevertheless a great doctor. So he's also retired like me. He's got 3 children like me, but all his 3 children are doctors who are very caring, and they're doing very well. Yeah.
So, you talked about siblings. Mickey in the book is largely based on your character, on you. And like you in real life, Mickey was entrusted with a lot of responsibilities. And in fact, those responsibilities were immense, but he doesn't even realize that he's, delivering in the book, if you read it. And so how much of you is in Mickey and vice versa?
That's a tricky question, because I don't know how much of it is me. But largely the story can be reflected as such. But even so, there are liberties you take in your writings, the licenses that you indulge in, and what they call the journalistic licenses or liberties that you take, which are permissible. So you let your imagination play also. So you don't really worry about the authenticity of it. Like I have gone to town describing various incidents or various circumstances. Like if you read the chapter on the burning of a neighbor's property.
Yes.
It was an absolute horrendous experience for me, but I lived through it, made a better person of me, made a person that didn't take things for granted forever. One was cautious, one was careful, one was more meticulous in delivering things or doing things which were expected to be done. So these were all the kind of lessons that shaped you, and you became a better person. Yeah, the experiences, like Dipankar would ask me many times, why would this? How would this relate to? Why is it a story of coffee? It's a story of coffee because it was the story of my growing up. It was the story of my parents' struggles, the realities that one encountered, the one faced, and the vagaries, the absolute uncertainties of nature, fighting nature, struggling with nature. I don't think I would like to relive it.
But your father, Ligor, in the book as well, is talked about in how he literally built Magadi Acres.
Absolutely.
From scratch, and he faced a lot of hurdles while doing so. Whether it was finance, whether it was weather, whether it was envious neighbors, as you mentioned, but it was his power and his determination and willpower that really pushed him ahead and said, okay, he's going to do this. Now, in Magadi Acres, in the book, Ligor wanted his son, Mickey, to continue with the tradition. What about you in real life? Did you have that pressure?
I did, because it had trapped me into a lifestyle, an expectation which was there, which I couldn't fulfill. He let me go for 3 years when I passed the UPSC exam. He said, okay, have your fling and come back.
But you didn't want to return?
No, I wanted to return. At every stage I wanted to return. But circumstances were such that you kept doing better and better. And the lure of getting your name in the print, whether you liked it or not, it spurred me on for more. And you delivered better, you had a lifestyle, a challenging lifestyle, and the challenges were more and more. That it kept me going. And my father had to put up with that pressure. He would rather sacrifice, himself than expect more out of his son to come and, help him. And
None of the other siblings were under such pressure to come back?
Everyone had a profession. Everyone was either a doctor or and the one brother who could have done perhaps was more of a what can I say? He was famous for being the most loving person, but he was also famous for destroying everything he touched. So he couldn't be relied upon by my parents. It's unfair of me to say that, but sometimes realities are stranger.
Have you shared the book, or did you share the manuscript with the family before you published it? And what was their reaction if you did so?
No, I'm yet to face that reality.
So, will the siblings be happy with the narrative?
Oh, there's much more to come in the next book, because the next book is actually the book that needed to be published first.
Okay. Okay. One of the 100 that is yet to come.
No. This is like this. It's a prequel to Magadi Acres. And by the way, it's pronounced as Magadi.
Magadi. Okay.
Magadi.
I stand corrected. Magadi.
No, unfortunately, the English language makes you, sort of put the accent elsewhere in 90% of the words. So, but if you are a South Indian, you would know how to,
I am a South Indian, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. But English.
Let me take you away from your family a bit. Like all the others who've been fascinated with coffee, and many of us are addicted to coffee, the chapters on coffee, you've chronicled the history rather meticulously. I mean, one didn't know that there was so much intrigue or jealousy and theft and smuggling and subterfuge and industrial espionage and all the chronicles of coffee. The humble bean that has been banned and termed illegal in so many countries around the world, and yet the love for the drink that made it bounce back each time. Personally, for me, the discovery of the origins of the word coffee was particularly fascinating, and I didn't know that coffee had roots in several languages. And we're all familiar in India with the Kashmiri green tea, the kahwa, and in Arabic it actually means coffee. In fact, in Yemen, I believe the name kahwa, which was originally a romantic term for wine, has been used for coffee. So it later became the Turkish kahwa, and then the Dutch coffee, and finally coffee in English. So what has been for you the most favorite part of your association with coffee?
It's simple. it comes from the Kaffa region of Ethiopia. Kaffa is the origin for the word coffee. That origin from Kaffa became a cafe in Italy. When the Pope okayed the whole thing, it was, a string of cafes that opened up in Italy.
Correct.
Made it literally a permanent entity. And today, next to oil, it's the most traded commodity. I mean, you'd be surprised the offshoots of industries that have sprung up because of coffee, and the kind of money people are making. We just know of Starbucks or Cafe Coffee Day and things like that, some of these things, but they're nothing as compared to. You'd be surprised, world over, people have their own versions of coffee, especially Colombia. The Colombians considered their coffee the best in the world.
Yeah.
Nicaraguans are no less. They are also, like that. Nicaragua has stepped further. You are talking of green coffee, green leaf. Nicaraguans today are the world's best green leaf coffee. It's absolutely from the coffee leaf. They produce, a decoction, something like a green tea. But it's only from coffee leaf. And it's fascinating too. And if you have known Kopi Luwak, Kopi Luwak is
Indonesian.
the excreta is from the civet cat. Like in Sri Lanka, when you go there, you may see paper produced by the dung of the elephant.
Yeah.
They feed coffee seeds to the elephant in Thailand and produce, sort of a coffee from that. But civet cat coffee is famous for Indonesia. Indonesia have got farms of civet cats and things like that. It's a fascinating story, when you chronicle these various different types of coffees, it is absolutely fascinating to go through,
So tell us, what is officially your favorite coffee?
My officially favorite coffee is Kapi. If you know Kapi,
Filter kapi.
filter Kapi is the best for me. My children don't agree with me, but I still prefer. Sometimes I indulge and I have these, because coffee is never in large cups. Like the Americans love coffee in
Big mugs.
Big mugs. Whereas we Indians, especially South Indians, and the Italians, whole of Europe is crazy over black coffee. And that black coffee is in tiny cups.
Yes.
And India is no better. It has coffee in tiny cups. And South Indian kapi, or as
We also have the kattan kapi in Kerala,
Kerala
which is the black coffee.
But the most famous coffee in South India, be it Kerala or Tamil Nadu, it is called the Kumbakonam.
Yes.
Kumbakonam, how Kumbakonam doesn't produce any coffee. They don't manufacture any.
It's interesting. I mean, Kumbakonam for me is like Timbuktu.
Yes.
It's just a term that everybody uses. I mean, they call it the Kumbakonam coffee, but nobody knows where is Kumbakonam or where this coffee came from.
No, everybody knows. I knew the bishop of Kumbakonam.
Yeah, but there's no coffee coming out of Kumbakonam.
Yeah.
So
it's but then the South Indian degree coffee, when you talk of, why is it called degree? Degree was a certain concentration expected out of milk, not coffee. Every household had its cow brought to the house, or the buffalo brought to the house, and they would measure the milk, the concentration of milk through a lactometer, and the degree of concentration decided on the milk that was used for the coffee. The steaming hot milk had to be this degree milk, and that's how the word came into Kumbakonam degree coffee. And these are fascinating stories when you go through it, when you read through them and find out how exactly it evolved and got stabilized or became a habit for the people at large.
Let me take you away from coffee. You've talked about your father and his imposing personality, but it was really your mother, Estelle, who was the silent force behind all of you. Her resilience was legendary, and as was her cooking skills, that was well known. Have you taken up after her? Do you cook? There's this anecdote you particularly mention about how committed meat eaters you were, and how she was able to convert you into eating vegetables.
For everyone, their mother is, the ultimate. So, I've done nothing extraordinary. For me, my mother was extraordinary. My father was, someone that I respected, but mother was someone you loved, and you modeled yourself after her. I mean, your resilience, especially, your fortitude. These were virtues you just can't get. And you ask any soul in the audience, everyone will say the same thing about their mother. It's that simple, because you always, modeled yourself after your mother. And when we went to a boarding school, before we went to a boarding school, she saw to it that we were well versed in everything, that we could survive on our own cooking. We could sew our own clothes.
Life skills.
Even today, life skills, these were the certain things that were taught. I still consider myself as the best fish cleaner. I don't think, I do not enjoy the fish that most people cook, because I'm not very clear whether the scales have been properly removed. We are absolutely fastidious about these kind of things, and
It's interesting that you've talked about your mother in such endearing terms, but you've also talked about many other impressionable women of the region. Apart from the women who were working on the estate, you've also talked about Rani Abaka Chauta. And tell us, did the women leave a lasting impression on you, or was it something that you developed over time, or were it the Jesuit brothers who were at school influencing you? What was it that caught you?
We Mangaloreans were lucky. We were lucky in the sense we appealed to the Pope to send us a religious order, and we were favored with the Jesuits who came and set up the St. Aloysius College. I'm proud to be a product of St. Aloysius College, and the whole of Africa came to St. Aloysius College. The whole of East Africa came practically. Nairobians, whole of Southeast Asia came to St. Aloysius College. or Loyola College was the other. And the entire Kerala came only to St. Aloysius. I proudly say that 90% of my classmates were Keralites, apart from the compliment that was there reserved for the Mangaloreans. But Keralites were the main stock who benefited from the Jesuit education, from the... but you'll read most about these things in the other book that is coming up, Sukhsagar, which is a fascinating recording of a lot of South Indian history that we otherwise don't get to read about.
I'd like to just, kind of dip back a bit into memory where you talk about, your grandma's natural cures and how you were sent on one of those expeditions to fetch the blood of bats, was it? To cure somebody's fever?
It's so funny how memory works up. You see, I happened to see a TV program where somebody was being complimented for shooting bats. The memory triggered beautifully, and I remembered that my grandmother had tasked us when we were children to go and get bat's blood to massage my baby sister. So that became an anecdote, that became a story, and that is funny things were associated with that story. Is a completely other matter, but then these were kind of instances that you remembered. My grandmother wanted us to bring bat's blood to massage the baby, the tortoise blood to massage the baby. Whether it was the blood that cured the baby, we don't know. She did get cured.
Well, modern medicine does use bat blood.
Yes.
Yeah. So, your book has been a revelation into Mangalore in South India, and it's reflected all the amalgamation that exists of the Hindu, the Catholic, the blend of various traditions, the flavorsome cuisines, the costume, language, and probably, like you've mentioned, it probably just skims the surface.
Absolutely.
You're working on another book now. You've mentioned Sukhsagar. Tell us a bit about that. And I think that can be the finale to today's...
Yes, actually, I should not be speaking about it too much. It's a fascinating revelation. You just touched a famous character of our area was Rani Abbakka. You'll get to read about Rani Abbakka you'll read about the Italians who came and discovered her and told her exactly, told us about, left records about her. There are the cults that ruled the area, the entire view. You will get a lot of things to read about. As I said, it's a prequel to this book. And this book is actually a sequel to that. So, but you'll wait for that. I think I'll ask you people to wait for that book when it comes. Dipankar has promised that in 6 months it will come. So, yeah.
Wow. You're able to finish that book in 6 months?
Oh, I told you it's finished earlier.
Wow. Okay. Maxwell, do you have any regrets at the end of this journey that you've, gone through coffee plantations, postings various places? Do you have any regrets today? Would you have wanted to go back to the coffee plantation?
Oh, no. I think my life is saturated with a lot of things. I have done I do have people around me, sort of friends who have coffee estates, relations who have coffee estates. I get an opportunity to relive coffee experiences tremendously. But I think I should be content with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Magadi Acres, Story of Coffee by Maxwell Pereira. There's a lot more that you can learn inside the book, so get yourself a copy. Before I request Maxwell and I to step down, we should, I think, ask Dipankar to please say a few words in thanks.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for taking time out this evening and joining us for the launch of this important book, Magadi Acres. Before I propose a vote of thanks, there's something I want to say about the book. Somewhere, Mr. Pereira mentioned that we had a change in mind overnight. Well, that's not true, really. We did not have a change in mind overnight. We did think about it. We loved the book. In fact, when you read the book, you realize the most important part about the book is that it's capturing a time and a heritage which otherwise would be so lost that we may regret losing it out. As a matter of fact, a lot of generational people who do not capture their thoughts as well as Mr. Pereira do not give us this opportunity, the youngsters, to know what and how things were in their times. This book is a reflection of a time gone by. It's a lesson that we can learn from to realize how life can be difficult and yet very good and very enjoyable. So that is what Magadi Acres is for you. Thank you so much once again for joining us. A round of applause for Continental Coffee Limited, who have helped us a lot in putting this event together. And they've also got some wonderful gifts for all of you who bought the book. I'm sure if you've got the book, you've got a nice little small hamper from them as well. Thank you so much, Continental Coffee Limited, for that. As a matter of fact, we have got some nice hampers as well for our dignitaries on stage. And to give them out, may I invite on stage Mrs. Kulzum Saifullah, Director of CCL Products. Ma'am, may I have you on stage, please? My first request is, ma'am, to please hand over this to Mr. Maxwell Pereira, the author and the star for the evening. Mr. Vora, may we have you on stage, please? Yeah, absolutely.
Does
can use
this
this
work? Yeah. I have to just say this about Maxwell Pereira, that he has not only done a service to the coffee industry, but he's done a great service to the state of Karnataka. I'm actually, he's from Karnataka cadre, and I'm an IS wife from Karnataka. So we are greatly in love with Mangalore. And all of you, I think once you read the book, will know that it's a great service to Karnataka and to the country and to coffee. Enjoy it, all of you. Bye-bye.
I now request ma'am to give this to Mr. Pankaj Vora. Mr. Vora, thank you for taking time out for this event. Ma'am, the next one is for Ms. Rini Simon Khanna, who has helped us a lot in putting this event together and done a wonderful job of helping us. Thank you so much. We have one for Mr. Tawari as well.
He's not here. No, but unko de. So would you come here?
This is for you.
And may I just thank the publisher for bringing out this book, because publishing is a very hard business. And I'm sure all of you will support it, as will the rest of India.
With that, we come to an end of a wonderful evening. For those who've got the books, they've already been signed, but if you want a special name, you can come to Mr. Pereira and get a special name there. For those who want to pick up a copy, the books are available outside. You can pick up your copy from there. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening ahead.
The signed one from outside. Yeah. Just, yeah, I believe so. Take that down. I'll take that down for you.